So here we are again, talking about blessing. You know, it's at least for most people, there's something about children that bring out quite naturally a feeling of goodwill and blessing. One has just this sense of, I want you to be happy and do well. And we give them really the benefit of the doubt. We see them as innocent, even when they're acting not as we wish. We nonetheless can come back to a sense of goodwill. It's so ironic that we can offer this goodwill to others, and sometimes it's hardest to offer it to ourselves. Sometimes we are our own worst critic. So it's helpful to begin to access this sense of one's original innocence as a being, one's kind of what one showed up to be. To remember that. Remember that not just as a kind of a mental memory, but even a visceral memory. And sometimes when you're actually in your heart, when you notice your heart, there can be just this visceral memory of what it was like to be a little being and get so excited about things, so involved, so connected, so alive. There's something, like just to let everything touch you. Before we went a little dead, before we embarked so heavily on the project of controlling ourselves, being good, fitting in, getting praise. Before that set in too heavily, there was a time you may be able to connect with. And even if there wasn't a time, some people are born into already very difficult situations. Sometimes you still can catch a glimpse of something that really wants to be here. Something that's excited to be here. Those of you who have been with me for a while know that that's one of my phrases that I sometimes offer people to say, though I tend to offer it in situations that you are experiencing something you don't want. To say, I really want to be here for this, as a way to conjure up that presence, which is life itself, that can meet any situation, not just the ones that are wanted. There's a genuine place inside. I really want to be here for this, for anything. Remarkably enough. But when I'm talking today, I really want to be here, is more that original wanting to be here. wanting to connect, just excited. I recall a retreat a long time ago. It was back when I was living in Cambridge, and there's a meditation center, the Cambridge Insight Meditation Center there. Larry Rosenberg was the head teacher then. And I did a retreat there. I think it was one where you went and you worked your normal kind of 9 to 5, whatever that was, and showed up in the evening and showed up on the weekends. Kind of, they call it a sandwich retreat, very much related to bringing presence to one's life. And for whatever reason, I don't recall a specific reason on that retreat, this throat thing was really very, very strong. This feeling of a pinch there, a band here, energetic band in my throat. And it hurt, and I felt a lot of aversion to it. I don't know if any of you who identified these energetic kinds of constraints inside of your body. I used to have kind of a band around the chest, just kind of squeezing. It was a little earlier than this one. The band had relaxed. Now it was like, and I had an interview with Larry, who has just been a very special teacher for me. And he did what a good teacher does. He kind of took me full of aversion to this thing that I didn't want, and did his little Aikido. And suddenly I was actually with the sensation and giving it goodwill, and a sense of realizing there's a reason it's there. It's a reason it's there. And Larry, I think, accurately assessed, there's something done to me when I was young that made it not feel safe to speak, to be myself. It was quite helpful to have that mirrored back. And so I sat on that retreat and felt this, and of course it gets stronger. Sometimes when you feel something, it doesn't just like go away. It got more and more intense, and then I realized I really needed to cry. And tears didn't come easily, because at that point I was a young man in my 20s. I'd done a pretty good job of forgetting how to cry, of restraining that. And something about the conditions of that retreat allowed me to feel into that energy and feel the frozen tears that were there. And they came out quite miraculously. I just cried in the meditation hall, which is a good thing, If you ever do intensive silent retreats, it's not uncommon for people to be crying in the meditation hall. It's a good thing. Softened. So something softened, and I could just feel my tears for not really being afraid to be who I really was. The very sensitive person I really am. And somehow that Aikido that he did, that the love that I was able to feel for myself, opened it up. And then I noticed all this energy, all this childlike energy. And when the retreat was over, I just wanted to connect with everybody, I was probably a little too, and that's not generally my way. I'm a pretty quiet guy in general, but something had opened and I just really delighted in that contact with people. And I could feel their energy better. And it was lovely. So I'm telling the story just by way of illustrating that most of us have closed down to who we really are. And not just a bad, we think we've closed down to something bad. We've actually closed down to the most wonderful thing. And somehow we learned, we were taught that the world preferred something else than what we were. It preferred something else to our open heart. And the body helps us do that, close down. The body helps. And it stores it as tension in various places. So to give your body loving intention is not a minor thing. It's not a minor thing on a physical level. It actually is very healing to when the body feels a kind of release of the good chemicals that you produce in your brain when you actually feel goodwill and blessing. But also on a sort of psychological, emotional level, there are things to reconnect with inside we've pushed away, we've exiled. They hold a lot of our energy. They're quite beautiful. They're vulnerable, perhaps. And we haven't wanted to be that, so we've shut them down. So a part of self-blessing is to turn the blessing toward ourselves and touch those places in us that haven't been wanted, places we may have left years ago. Something of what we were born to be before we learn to adapt. You can work with it very directly inside of yourself, especially if you can begin to identify these places in you. They may show up as vulnerable. Vulnerable is kind of a word that means openness that you're afraid of. So our original nature is to be open. And yet we've learned in various ways it's not safe to be open. So when we are open, we often feel vulnerable. We often feel fear. When there's something that wants contact, something in us that we've hidden, comes with a feeling of vulnerability. And it may take some looking around to find it. It may not be right there for you. It's why, this this practice of goodwill, it helps to do it consistently for a while. Something deepens. It's like there's some places inside that have their arms folded and said, oh yeah, you're going to do this self-blessing thing. Well, we'll see how that goes. You know, I'm not going to trust you. I'm not going to trust you with your real self, your real feelings. You haven't proven worthy of it. You know, it's almost like they're in there and they need you to be consistent in your message of, I want to befriend you. I want to offer you my hand of friendship and love. I want to send you blessing. I want you back. I miss you. You were never bad or wrong. That was all a mistake. They might have to listen to that for a while before they're even willing to poke their head out. Your job is to send that good vibe their way, the one of blessing, the one of goodwill. And it's a beautiful thing when you begin to feel a kind of a line, call it a telephone line or an opening to something of that original brightness that you are.